first of what we hope may be several webinars. Oops, now I should say welcome to the first of what I hope may be several webinars focused on college curling in the U.S. Joining us today is Bobby Torres, who was the co-founder and first president of Penn State's Curling Club. And I'm still admitting people. And he had such a successful recruiting operation that, Bobby, correct me if I'm wrong, but you had 250 members upon starting. So I figured he was the man to talk to us about some tips and tricks and things to keep in mind. We're not going to focus exactly on starting up a college program. We can do that in a separate webinar if people are that interested. A couple of housekeeping things. In the upper right-hand corner, you will see a chat button. This is where you will please send your questions. Roger Olette, my other half at the Utica Curling Club College Curling Program, will monitor the chats for questions, and he'll bring them up as he feels it's pertinent to the presentation. And at the end, we'll have time for him to finish up anything he hasn't gotten through. And if we really have time, then we can unmute everybody and use the raise hand feature and actually have a conversation about things we've done at our curling clubs that have worked particularly well for us. Okay, so let's get started. With no further ado, Bobby, the podium is yours, as it were.
Thanks. You guys hear me?
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, awesome. So thanks. Yeah, as you said, I was at Penn State. Unfortunately, graduated last year. It was the bad time to graduate, but I've moved on since then. Currently in New York, I investment banking in New York, hoping to bring curling here at some point. I know I've been speaking to some people about that, so maybe that's in the future. But as you said, founded the club in Penn State in 2018. I see we have a few people from the club at Penn State on here today, which is good to see. Current president, and I think some more exec are on the line as well. So if there's more questions about Penn State or anything that I might not be able to answer, there's also current exec at the club here today. So as I said, we're just kind of hit on some of the stuff that we did at Penn State. But first, I mean, we kind of discussed, like, talking about starting a college club, just like as a pointer, the importance of the college clubs in general. It's critical. I've spoken to this with many people in the past, many clubs, and anybody on the phone here probably is very aware that college clubs are a great feeder into programs at any club anywhere around the country. You can see top right, we just have a little bit of data on that, just to have something kind of show most, if not all, college curlers, after they try to learn in college, are likely to kind of move into clubs after graduation. So that's kind of an important thing to note. And on the bottom, that's also an interesting tidbit. I'm sure we'll kind of talk a little more later about arena ice versus dedicated ice. But right now, a little bit over half of clubs seem to be using dedicated ice for college curling, which honestly surprised me a little bit. I know a bunch of arena clubs. I know it's different around the country, however. From Penn State, obviously, we're in the Northeast, and we are a very much arena club, unfortunately, for now. But that is something interesting to note. And just noting about college curling in general, and this will kind of go into what we spoke about later, it's important partially because it's easy to recruit college curlers in some ways. It's difficult in others. It's difficult to retain them. But college kids in general want to try new things. They want to do things. They want to find things with their friends to do. So curling kind of fits that vibe very well. And we can talk about how to kind of fit them in. So just some barriers, college curling. Again, not getting too deep into the whole starting college curling club. I'm sure we could talk about that more later or at a different time, as we've kind of discussed. But obviously, there's a lot of red tape around college clubs, as anybody on the phone who's at a college club is probably very well aware. You take the red tape around a usual, nonprofit organization, and it's a lot of the same stuff. But unfortunately, when there's another club office between you and the resources you need, it can add a lot of barriers there. So that's one of the challenges we kind of face with college clubs. In addition, you can kind of see student interest, commitment, ice time. These are kind of the key things. Students don't have the money to be spending a ton of money on dues and things that could sponsor clubs that can take ice time at perfect times a day. So that kind of ends up a key barrier for many of these clubs. And obviously, COVID-19 has changed things a lot. Kind of see in the bottom right there, it's about 50-50 clubs, curling, not curling. I think this is a little bit skewed. I did not do too much of the math there, but I think it's a little bit skewed towards clubs that are active at this time. I know the survey You guys sent arounds, and it was filled out by a lot of schools, and the more active clubs likely to have a few more responses in there. But obviously, COVID is wrecks not only curling in general, obviously this year with no competition in person, but recruitment, which is kind of the most important thing to a college club in general. Success or failure comes down to year after year of good recruitment. So just some basic things that we kind of learned at Penn State, and the Penn Staters on the line, if they want to pipe in at any point, they feel more than free. But kind of know your target, know the students you're going after with college clubs. We kind of looked at, you're looking for people that maybe they used to be athletes, maybe they still are athletes. That's kind of the niche that we found very successful. Also, students that are just looking to do any sort of student activity, and that's going to be your filler of your club. You're going to find a lot of college clubs, you're going to find like 2 or 3 different tiers of members. As you get larger, you're going to have your core group that they're there every week. They are traveling with the teams. They are training. Then you have your second tier that might be in like leagues with the club, but they're not as involved. Then you have your third tier who shows up once in a while to a meeting. They go to social events, things like that, which is important. They fill out your ranks. They also pay dues, and that is very, very key to subsidizing those more active members to kind of try to bring down their costs. So going off that, seeing the top right there, maintain your image. That's something that we found very successful. I didn't say something there.
That's me, Bobby. I want to stop you for just a second. Would you talk about the different levels of college club membership that you hosted? Because I don't know that how many clubs have that.
Yeah, so we had a couple tiers, and it they blended into each other. So at Penn State, we had a league, had before COVID. I guess everything's kind of on the rocks right now, but we have the league, which is that's your more dedicated membership. The league is between 50 and 100 people, depending on the semester. That was Sunday nights, every Sunday night, 16 to 20 teams. I forget the exact number. Our league also, if you want to get into it, we had teams of 5 in our league, which kind of, raised some eyebrows here and there, but it was literally the only method for us to get that many bodies onto the ice in the amount of time we had allotted to us. So we had to get a little creative. We have something called HPP. So we have our own high performance program group that was 16, I think 14 to 16 people. That was kind of designed as to be that real core of people to kind of try to train and kind of get better at the sport and win more. Penn State, we had the opposite problem of most clubs had. We had so many people trying to go and compete that we were trying to figure out ways to put together teams that could be successful on the road, and that was a little difficult for us. A lot of our time was spent, how do we, send 7 weeks straight of trips, 2 trips a weekend all around the Northeast. How to put together teams that are going to compete well in that situation. So that's kind of where that came from. And, those people are naturally going to be the people that end up leading the club in general. They're there every week. They have strategy sessions during the week. We were trying to, when COVID hit, put in things like, physical training together, going to the gym together, things like that. Third tier would just be basic members. The way we did it was 20 or $25 that you'd get ability to join one Learn to Curl. And that margin for us is pretty darn large. The amount of ice time we used, an hour 15-minute Learn to Curl, $25 a pop. We fit 40 to 50 people on the ice for a Learn to Curl. That margin went all into subsidizing the rest of the members. Those are the members that go to one Learn to Curl. They might pay for an extra hour of ice occasionally. Otherwise, may they go join our other activities. But otherwise, I call them filler members just for financial purposes, and they're really critical if you want to build a large club. As people know with their own clubs, obviously, every dues-paying member is a key part of the organization. So top right, maintain your image. Just really quickly, one of the things we found very important was finding a really good, digital designers to kind of make ourselves look professional a little bit. Penn State's a school known for sports. We wanted to look like a sport as much as we wanted to feel like a sport. If anybody's ever seen our social media feeds, they know we've posted pretty darn, put together things. That was very on purpose. It's kind of creating the image around the club that if somebody loads up your pages, they think you are a full-fledged Penn State sport. And that blended not only into recruiting, but also into fundraising. When you're fundraising and that's your image, it goes a very long way versus, just putting some things online occasionally that are half put together, half not. Bottom left, social media. Again, social media is by far the best way to reach members. I think my next slide kind of has some of the other things we've tried here, but that was always the largest recruiting method. Also, things like involvement fairs and things like that, which we could touch on a little bit. Every school has different. Some have like an involvement fair at the beginning of a semester that student organizations can go sit at a table and yell at people and yell at people on campus to try to recruit them. Give out candy. I've seen many things tried. That's always a great way to recruit people. But social media in the end, every school has, a class group, the class of 2020, class 2021, class 2022, organizing a way to get people on social media, hey, we have 10 people on the board. You guys are in charge of posting in that group. You guys are in charge of posting in that group. Let's make sure we, flood social media so every one of the students at this school sees our ads in the next 2 days or so. That's super important. Bottom right, resource allocation is something that I don't think I appreciated as much as I should have when I was with the club. But you have a variable amount of time per person. We were very lucky. Our board was, I totally forget, it was I think 12 people on the board, then 4 executives. So we had 16 people running the club at any given time. So we had plenty of man hours to go around. But you only have, say you have 5 or 6 people doing recruiting. Look at where you want to put your resources. Look at your school. Figure out, is it worth it to go sit out at an involvement fair? Is it really going to do you any good? Is it worth it to go on social media? Maybe your school is a very small school and you could basically get everybody sitting out at involvement fair. Is it worth it putting together things on social media? So that's a school by school thing. Happy to touch on that more or speak to that later. But it's just something to keep in mind that your leadership might have other clubs and classes, that other thing we do at school supposedly, to get to. So make sure you allocate those resources correctly. Yes, this kind of hits on it. The two, and I'm sure somebody's on this call that could, it's probably laughing at my post right here. Posters and flyers, they were completely and utterly useless, we found, out of all of our methods of recruiting. We tried everything. We always put, flyers and things with QR codes, which a ton of student organizations do. I could see Mike nodding his head. I think I sent him on, he's probably spent a good 10 or 15 hours of his life putting out flyers for me. We tracked responses on those flyers. I think we got like 2 or 3 out of all that. So don't try it. It's not even worth it in some cases. Otherwise, social media involvement fairs, traditional media, getting in the news. We did very well with things like our local news. Once you're in there, it's obviously free press is good press. I mean, nobody's going to argue with that. So, reach out to media contacts at different newspapers. Like, hey, we have a Learn to Curl coming up, run by the school. And we had a lucky thing where until we created, we spun off the Nittany Valley Curling Club, obviously, which many of you might have heard of in the past. But until that, there was no other curling in the community. So we kind of use that as, hey, we're the curling people, come to us. Friend group hopping, this is super important. And I think, all the students, sorry?
Pardon me for those that don't know the term. What does that mean?
Oh, friend group hopping. So it's the term I'd put on it. Probably most students on the line are aware, when one person in your friend group joins a club or an organization, odds are they're going to drag over 10 other people. So that's kind of one of the most important things to note. So when you're at that involvement fair, grabbing one person probably means that you're going to get 4, 5, 6 people out of them, at least at your first Learn to Curl, because college students tend to travel in packs. It's different freshmen versus sophomores, juniors and seniors. Very few seniors join organizations at the end, but freshmen, they might come in one at a time. Sophomores, juniors, odds are if I want to recruit, Ben's going to bring Luke, Tyler, Kevin, and everybody. So keeping that in mind in recruiting, who you're recruiting is super important. So retainment, these are a lot of quotes that we kind of grab from survey results. Most people join a club, they stay for the people. Obviously, everybody on the line knows that at their own curling clubs. A lot of it's all about the people. And that's super important to know. That being said, obviously college clubs are very much should be run like a business in a lot of ways as you want to grow them, but keeping in mind the people. Some things we've done in the past to kind of keep people involved, branch groups, that was kind of thrown in as a nod of the head to some of our friends here. We literally had a student section kind of create themselves off of our side. We encouraged it, and obviously that did very well for us. Other sports, we had IM sports. I think we did football and softball. Every university probably has IM sports. Most of them have some sort of club/organization league that you can join as your club. So, club curling can go up at, club baseball, at flag football. And that's a great way to kind of get to know each other and get off the ice. Other school events, every school has their own events. Here I have a picture of our thon. So we have a thon committee, which kind of brings people together. It's the world's largest student-run philanthropy organization, and we have our own thon committee. Watch parties, kind of through that. I know a lot of people like to talk about watch parties here. We did them as well. They're very good. You order food, get everybody in the room, talk about curling, talk about life. People come, they just do homework in the room together. That's how you kind of build up a club around you. Let's see. And retainment is also about remembering your target. So when somebody comes to learn to curl, it's important to note that most people are not going to return. Penn State has had very good results. We've probably, like on the top right, you can see some survey results. I don't know if anybody remembered a few years ago. I was with a team that ran some curling research, and we put out these results about how many people return to your club. That survey was to about 400 curlers in Canada, the US, and some in Europe. So those are the numbers that came out. Number of people that returned to a club after learning to curl. Penn State, our retention rate was probably a bit over 60 or 70%. I think partially when we recruited, we really targeted people that we thought would join the club, so that helps. Partially, that friend group hopping mentality, I think that worked well for us. We kept that in mind. People brought their friends, and odds are they're going to join, a team with their friends in our league the next semester. But focusing on the fun parts of the game, I think, especially for college events versus, normal events, college kids aren't going to want to get too much into the weeds about how to actually play the game very well at their first learn to curl. They really do want to just chuck a rock. That's what I always called it. Get them out there, let them chuck a few rocks. Versus a real learn to curl, you do want to get into some of that. You want to get into some gameplay. You want to actually get their feet wet, get to know the sport a little more. College kids, the learn to curls that we ran, the ones that were more informal, I've found worked a lot better. For context, a lot of times we'd say we had a sheet open on a league night. We had ice time at 10:30 p.m. Sunday nights for those leagues. Say we had a sheet open, we'd put out ads, hey, we have a learn to curl. We'd throw learn to curlers on that sheet to make sure we filled it out, made money off that sheet, and kept the bank account flowing. Scheduling events, super important as well. Obviously, weekdays are not going to work for most college kids, especially nowadays in Zoom U situations. There's no such thing as, a good weeknight anymore. So weekends is always great. That being said, obviously, you're dealing with college kids. Weekend nights are not going to work because college kids have other things going on weekend nights. We targeted Sunday night. It worked well for us. The fact that we managed to fill up ice at 10:30 p.m. Sunday night kind of shocks a lot of people. But that being said, it's the only night a week that college kids are actually free. They don't have exams. They don't have, parties off campus. We'll just put it there. There's no sports going on except for, like watching sports, but that's not as big of a deal. And so looking at the bottom left, I said, daytime hours are no-go. 2 p.m. Monday is not going to work for a college kid. 2 p.m. Saturday is not going to work for a college kid, unfortunately. Commitment-wise, short commitments are always better for college kids, especially. One time off is critical, and with college students. So as I said, kind of planning your ice time around making money off of those curlers, because in case you can't tell, I'm very financially focused. That's, what I do. Finding a way to subsidize for the rest of the members. For example, in Penn State, one of the ways that we actually retain members to get them, on travel teams, we subsidized usually more than half to 75% of all travel. The organization paid for that. That money didn't come from the university. That money strictly came from running the club, operating revenues coming throughout the club. So that is kind of one of those ways. And that kind of blends into, retaining those dedicated members. Finding ways to get them traveling, not have them pay too much is critical. I said, traveling can get expensive. College kids, number one, it's a lot of time commitment to travel once they're actually dedicated members, actually traveling to spiels around the country. But, if they're spending $200-$300, a week to go travel, that's not going to happen. We try to target less than $40 a weekend, no matter where they work, including hotels, spiel fees, transportation, anything we could throw in there. And that worked pretty well. And nationals, obviously, our goal was always nobody going to nationals should pay for nationals. So we always made sure that was in the budget. Unfortunately, our year at nationals got a little COVIDed out, but we definitely enjoyed having that time. I'm seeing some questions. I don't know if I cannot find how I find those questions, however.
Roger will read the ones off that you have to worry about. Mostly it's comments so far.
Yeah, awesome.
Except I will since I just typed one in, I'll preempt and say, your traveling teams, am I correct in remembering that you did not send out teams to bonspiels at other clubs in your first year of existence?
So we had a kind of complicated coming of age. We were not cleared to curl. We were not cleared to be a physical activity for quite a while. A lot of fights with the university. A lot of the stuff we did later was out of spite, but we made sure we got that put together. Our first actual semester on the ice was spring of 19. We did not send anybody out that spring. In that fall, we were cleared in early October. By late October, I think we sent a team to Broomstones right away. And from there, I can't remember how many. I think we sent every weekend at least one trip out that weekend. I know those couple weekends where we sent 2 or 3 trips. Then a couple of big events that we kind of put together. So that is another area of college curling that we can get into. That type of planning. That was quite the time. We were running a full-scale travel operation, but it worked well for us.
Okay, we're just about Dean Mooney, who I would really like to bring in for just a few minutes, because he's got to go to a board meeting at Rutland Rocks. He helped Castleton University get started, and they curl at an arena club. And I know, Nancy, you could speak to it also. Michael Kay from St. Louis is here. He's got an arena. But Dean, before you have to run, could you talk a little bit about how Rutland Rocks helped the college program get going?
One of the things we did was, and Rebecca is here. Rebecca Corset is also here from the club. So if you have questions, I'm sure she'll be able to. She's probably regretting coming to the meeting now that I've mentioned her. One of the things we did was we actually, curlers from the club became the sponsors on campus. One of them was actually a teacher on campus, an instructor on campus. And so that's what we did, was we actually looked at recruiting one of the faculty so that they could then push the issues on campus that we needed to. We also bring them out anytime we can. We all travel together. It's just a small team, 4 to 5 kids, because it's a relatively small university. But they curl with us all the time, and anytime we can get them involved, we have them on the ice. They help. And we've taken them to several bonspiels also outside of the college arena. But also, one of the other things that's happened is they've paired up with RPI, which is about an hour away, who are just a phenomenal club as far as taking somebody under their wing. So we looked for a larger club, and they kind of adopted us and took us under their wing and just invited us. I mean, literally one night I get this text saying, we're on our way to Broomstones to practice, which is 3 hours away. And that's what they did. So it's nothing phenomenal, just a lot of adjusting for each college. And I think that Bob is right. Each university or college is going to be so different. You're going to have to dance with them to figure out what you want. So the other thing is, I'm going to have to go, unfortunately. But Michael, if you would like to contact me, MJ has my contact information. I'd be more than willing to help in any way that I could.
One quick question. Whoops.
Before you leave, go ahead. Go ahead. Nope.
Monetarily, did you cut your kids any kind of a break on ice rental fees?
Actually, what happened was the university paid for it all. They did a great job at getting several $1,000s, including an honorarium for the coach of who I am, but it goes right back into the club. And so we didn't have to worry about that. Were we prepared to do it? Of course we were. But when the college said, oh, no, we'll pay for it, we had no problems whatsoever. But again, working with the college and getting somebody on campus was so very, very important, we found.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. Have fun at your next meeting.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Yeah.
Back to our feature presentation.
So, I mean, something that actually you just touched on there. I mean, it's not, I think it's in the appendix of this presentation. As you kind of mentioned, not getting too deep in the weeds of actually starting a club or anything like that. But I think fundraising, financing is the most critical. Again, I'm biased, like that's what I do. But the only way for a successful club like this to operate is going to be finding ways to make it affordable. Not every school is going to have it, but some schools do have ways to get funding from the university. At Penn State, we had limited funding. It was like about $1,000, I think, up front. In the end of the day, that was, a few percent of our total budgets. Any school that has it, chase it as much as you can. That being said, there is a lot of red tape. I warn anybody. Everybody probably is aware. Universities are big bureaucratic institutions. There's probably a lot of levels to get through. That's why finding somebody at the university that maybe has done that in the past is helpful. Finding an advisor who might be an advisor for another organization that's done it is super helpful. But otherwise, figuring out when you're setting up your club, and this is something, again, I'd be happy to talk to anybody about. Reach out directly to me. Finding ways to operationally budget and kind of model out your organization to be successful long range financially. Have a really good fund that you can dip into when recruitment goes down. That's one of the things at Penn State. One of my goals was, hey, make sure these guys have plenty of cash in the bank that say they have a bad recruitment semester. They're not relying on learn to curl fees to, finance people going on trips. There should be some sort of rainy day fund there. So as much as it's critical at any nonprofit or any other club or any business, I think that's something that's forgotten amongst a lot of college clubs. The finances of it go a little bit over people's heads occasionally. So having somebody on the board that does that, having a really good basis in how your club financially operates is super important. Think that's from those slides. I think we're going to hand it over.
It's now on to me. I feel somewhat silly with Gordon here, but I wanted to take just a couple of minutes to talk about the USA Curling College Curling Program, because ever since Gordon got this off the ground and running, after a year off with no national sort of competition, which used to be run out of the Illinois Curling Foundation, he got this program up and running. And last full season at most clubs curl, we had more than 450 registered curlers. And we started off a lot smaller than that. And the way we did is we held out the carrot of a national championship. So we have a twofold mission: to promote the growth of college curling and to encourage, shall we say, excellence in college curling. And we are trying to accomplish both those that bifurcated mission by getting people to participate in what we call the USA College Tour. These are all the bonspiels that are held at local clubs across the country, either organized by students or members of the host club. Anyone who is a full-time college student and is a member of the USCA may participate in these events. And the students can also arrange competitions between individual schools, what we call head-to-heads. And by participating in the tour, the students earn points. And at the end of the season, the 16 teams who have accrued the most points get an invite to the USA Curling National College Championship, which will be held in 2022 at Fargo, North Dakota, because they got cut out in 2019. I mean, I was on the phone with Gordon saying, Gordon, I'm about to leave to the airport, yes or no? Alas, and people like Bobby, I'm so sorry it was your senior year is all I can say.
I was unfortunately not going to that one. I balked at going to give some spots to some of our better curlers.
It's a great time. Even if, no matter, you see a very wide range of level of play at the national championship. You basically earn your way in by growing the sport, and then the national championship sorts out who's got the best team. It's a great program. We're very grateful to Gordon for starting it. Bobby, can you go to the next slide? So this is, and you can add your email up there once the webinar is over, Bobby, so if people want to get in touch with you, they can. I have multiple emails accounts. I read them all. These are the two best ways to get a hold of me. As you can tell, I'm at the Utica Curling Club by my personal Gmail, and I still do college curling business under my Colgate email, even though I'm retired. GNCC does not yet have an official YouTube channel. So meanwhile, we're posting our webinars, and there's been several. There's been a strategy webinar and several on ice making and arena clubs. I encourage those of you who work at those kinds of institutions to check them out. They're currently hosted at the Finger Lakes Curling Club YouTube channel. And all of you will get a copy of the slide deck that Bobby put together. If you registered, you get it. So,
and there's also some slides in the back here too that we kind of threw in. If anybody wants to take a look at them later, feel free. There's some on different aspects of. Oh, that's not supposed to happen. Different aspects of college curling. And yeah, I mean, I'll throw my email address on here before it goes out. But as anybody who's dealt with me in the past knows, I might or might not respond at any time of the night, unfortunately, with my work schedule. But always happy to help or consult with anybody. It's really good to do that type of stuff. I'm really happy to be involved.
Okay, so let's throw this open for everybody to, verbally ask questions, answer what they found out. I'm particularly interested in what sorts of techniques people use at recruiting fairs, because that's one of our biggest entrees at 2 of the 4 programs that curl, well, 2 of the 5 programs that curl out of the Utica Curling Club. Yes, we have 5 schools technically. What do people do to get other people's attention, to get them to come to your table and sign up? Has anybody had any particular techniques that they use that are very successful? And you can unmute yourself, raise your hand, type it in the comments. None of the above.
I guess I'll kick it off so you can hand it off to anybody. But our organization, we picked a lone survivor, that was usually me, unfortunately, to drag a rock all the way to the involvement fair, and had it under shade and all that, so we didn't want to damage it. But we have a bag. Our club, it was a little fun fact, our club has a bag in the bottom of the ice arena on campus that we carry our rock around in for involvement fairs and things like that. And it works really well. You say, hey, want to lift up a rock? And it does a great job.
I like the idea of dragging it. One assumes it's a spare rock. That'll get attention.
We do have one question left over from the presentation, and maybe Bobby could answer.
Sorry, Roger. Thank you.
Yeah. There was a question about equipment. So what did you do about providing sliders, grippers, brooms, and other equipment? Did you provide that, or did members have to buy their own?
Yeah, great question. So when we started, we utilized the GNCC program here for the kit, great resource for all new clubs. We use that for, I think, 2 events. That was, everything in a truckload. So thank you to everybody for that from the GNCC. We used that to fundraise. At that point, we purchased everything. We have a club set of, I think, 35 brooms. We have a set of 12 travel brooms that we give to people traveling if they need to. We don't want them to use our club brooms, obviously, traveling. Most of our travel members do have their own equipment, but we like to have plenty of extras to send around in our equipment bags. Grippers, sliders, everything was included. I think we have like 200 grippers. I don't know why we purchased that many. I really don't. That was one of the biggest mistakes we ever made. Plenty of grippers. Rocks, I think we have currently 3 sets. We did the lease to own on those. I think 2 of them are purchased out. I think the last should be purchased out now. We're looking at getting the 4th, I'm aware of. And I think it's also important to note, just in flexibility of a college organization, one of the things we did to kind of help finance ourselves and kind of help grow was that we created the Nittany Valley Curling Club and spun it off into the community. The idea was to raise more people in the community to curl, which raises fundraising for us. It also gave us a way, we let them use our equipment during the summer and things like that. That kind of helps, instead of sitting there collecting dust, they're curling in our arena during the summer. They're producing revenues. It all flows back into the student organization, kind of helps out the student organization. And in general, as I said, growing that curling in the community. Just having the college club is amazing, but having a community organization there means people to go to our own events. We host matches and things, people to go and fill up stands, which was our next step. That was unfortunately cut from us a little bit there with COVID. Who knows when that's going to be the next time that's going to happen. But that's just one of those things about being flexible.
Yeah, it should be pointed out that Bobby's in the situation where they curl on campus at a campus-owned facility. Many of the things about fundraising, you would have to negotiate with your host club, because most college curlers curl at another organization. In addition to, they're sponsored by the university, but playing in another organization. It's a great opportunity you have.
Yep, and also of note, our club is both GNCC and a USA Curling Club. We did that very rapidly once we were given the ability to travel. We realized it didn't make sense for us, although we had already created Nittany Valley, it didn't make sense for us to wrap them into USA Curling, so we instead wrapped the Penn State Club in. Nittany Valley is also a GNCC club, thankfully, so they have their own things going on, but it gave us the ability to pay our dues through our organization, do everything right through Penn State instead of another club. And that's something that it depends how big your club obviously is, if you can, take that on, but it worked very well for us. I liked having that, in-house instead of outsourcing that at all.
Michael K., you're up next. You had 3 questions.
Thank you for having me. I got 3 questions. Mostly from the point of view of university. When we're going to start club at the university, it's nice to know how they see the curling club inside of their facility or inside of their crowd. What's the benefits of university or colleges they can we can throw to them? What's their interest to have a curling club, if any?
That's a great question. I mean, when we started our organization, a lot of our stuff was going, originally when we started, we actually went to university trying to kind of have them start it for us before we realized that we had to do it by ourselves. I said, that's, again, kicking it off to university is super important. It's one of the most difficult parts because they want to know, hey, like, you want to be an organization, that's cool, but you guys are running around on ice with very heavy rocks. There's a certain aspect to that a university risk perspective isn't fan of up front, because they have no idea. I mean, when they get to know the sport, you're going to get to know some of the things you do to kind of mitigate that risk. It's less of a problem. The way we went at it was, hey, our way we looked at it was, hey, we're Penn State, we're a sports school, we're great at every sport. Here's a sport that Penn State does not exist in at all. Our motto is, we're getting involved in everything here. So that was the way we went at it. I think it's different every university. I know some kind of look at it as like, hey, what if we have, some sort of curling classes too? We could loop in with the university that way. I've heard of that. We never went that direction. It was never necessary for us, but it's a great opportunity, I think, for certain, especially small universities. So yeah, I also see, just 'cause it's top of mind, that kind of loops in, has Penn State ever wanted to host a Bonspiel? And this is kind of loops back into the, what benefit does give university? Because for us, we're using campus property, so we're paying the campus for our ice time. So we kind of looped in that way. Again, that's super unique to us. I know only a few schools are going to have that type of situation, but we went to our university like, hey, we're going to use the ice time that nobody wants. So there's no reason not to. But looking at that, yeah, if you want to add on anything to that question, I don't know if I got it or not, but.
What do you think about this aspect when you're bringing typical age, let's say college age, pre-college age students to the Bonspiels? Can they think of it like a part of their recruitment? Can they sell their college to them? Is that the angle we can use?
It depends. A lot of universities, such as ours, if anybody's ever seen our logo, it does not have the Penn State logo in it for a reason. It's licensing issues and things like that. And there's issues all over the place with that. For example, we were looking at hosting, and this, I know I saw something about, have we ever wanted to host? We'd love to host at Penn State. We are looking at actually having a one-off match against Syracuse. I don't know if anybody from Syracuse is on the line here. I haven't gone through the list, but we're having a exhibition match with them, we can call it. I know a lot of people are aware of what we were trying to do there. But that was one of the things we're talking about, like, hey, how do we sell merchandise? How do we loop in, the universities sell their own stuff? And that was a question that we never got answered, unfortunately, because COVID hit. But that is an aspect of it. Some organizations, like, we could actually pay Penn State, I'm pretty sure, to use their logo in certain areas. So I think they would do that. But also, it should be noted, this is different at every university, but large universities, a lot of times the actual logo is owned by the athletic department, which is not the university. So for example, at Penn State, the Nittany Lion logo that everybody kind of knows is not a university property. It's actually owned by Penn State Athletics, which is an entirely different organization. So it really depends on the club itself, the university itself, if that's even allowed on campus, if it's allowed by the organization, and if it's licensed to do that.
Okay, looks like Gordon and Roger reading my mind, and that's exactly what I was going to ask in my second question. So, how's the curling club seen by the college, like a purely social club, or is there any association or cross relations with athletic departments?
Another great question. At Penn State, we actually were in a very strange spot where we were not a club sport. We were a physical activity for many reasons that we can go into later. I'm sure anybody from Penn State is very aware of our situation there. Even some people on the phone are probably aware of our situation there. It's different every university. For example, ours, since we were as student activity, we were under the Office of Student Activities. Rather than be a club sport, you'd be semi with the athletic department. There's like a weird crossover there. That being said, I'm not aware of, and anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not aware of any club team that is actually a full-fledged athletic team with their own university. There are some sports, for example, at Penn State, there's a couple sports that are in sports. I think rugby is one, I'm pretty sure. Mike, not if I'm correct. Rugby is in that weird where they're an actual Penn State athletic sport, but they don't have an NCAA equivalent. But they managed to get themselves to be an actual sport. I don't know how they did it. We chatted about that, but we have never got that far at this point. But most schools are going to be just clubs, a physical activity or a club sport or something like that.
And that does vary from school to school.
Yeah.
Thank you. And the last short question, if you don't mind. Is there any data available which colleges have more success stories, like smaller local chamber-like colleges or big nationally recognized universities?
I'll let you guys
It's probably all over the map.
Yeah.
I mean, I can provide data broken down by type of school based on who participated in the 2018-19 season. But we've got everything from large universities like University of Nebraska and Nancy Myers here to small liberal arts colleges like Hamilton College with, I don't know what Hamilton's at. It's about 15 to 1,800 students and everything in between. So it's more, I think, a feature of the host facility, which in Bobby's case also happened to be the school. How successful are they at getting the kids to come back? So, Nancy, oh yes, I'm so jealous of you.
Thank you.
So I also work with Creighton and Wayne State College here in Nebraska, and each college has their own personality. In Nebraska, start out very small, only 4 students. And I was working for the institution, University of Nebraska at the time, and so we just struggled. Nebraska laughed at us that we're Big Ten, you're not NCAA, all those things, and we just were persistent. So a lot of it is patience and persistence and getting to know, I think, the structure of the university, the college, and how they legitimize a sport like curling. And being a little obnoxious, that always helps.
In a nice way.
I think to kind of add on to that, one of the important things that I'm sure you guys had there is, having at least 1 or 2 students that are willing to do the legwork up front. That's a huge part of it. As I kind of said, I will go off and off and off about, financial planning, modeling. You should have a college club should be run like a business. That's kind of forgotten amongst a lot of college clubs. And I think the most successful club's going to be seen like that. And I think that's something that, again, feel free to reach out, and I can go into that and on and on and on about that type of stuff, modeling out your organization like that. But having somebody willing to do that, give the hours to do it up front, that's what you need to get started anywhere. Unfortunately, that's the key to starting any organization.
Gordon, if you can make it brief, Lucy Cooper's been very patiently waiting to ask a question.
No, go ahead, Lucy. I'll come in after that.
Okay, thanks.
I am the president of the University of Oklahoma Curling Club. We're kind of far away from all the competitions. With COVID, it has been a struggle to get people on the ice. The league that we curl in, our kind of like host league, is an hour away. It is expensive to get on the ice. We've been very blessed, and this season we've had some wonderful sponsors that have been willing to pay for our ice fees. But just kind of in general, it is difficult to get people into the club, retain them. I was just wondering if anyone had any advice on that front.
Well, I'll start with, if you can, the hour is a problem, although we've had schools an hour and a half away come and curl at the Utica Curling Club. They did struggle maintaining a presence, and one of those schools is no more in the college curling arena. Finances sound like a real big problem for you guys. If there's any way the school can help with the ice fees. Arenas, I know arena clubs are, you're at an arena, you're curling at an arena, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Those are just killers. But perhaps the university, or you have an advisor, a faculty advisor or a staff advisor?
We do, yes.
Good. Maybe they can help you make a pitch to the arena and to the school to get some sort of quid pro quo. You guys will come help work a couple of learn to curls, and in return for that, they'll cut your ice fees if at all possible. I'm not by no means an expert on arena club finances. It's one of the reasons I wanted Dean to talk. And the reason they wanted him to talk is I knew that his club was willing to cut the college students a break on their fees. And after that, I would imagine you're in the middle of nowhere. An hour is a typical trip to go anywhere. It is where we live too, in Hamilton, although not quite an hour to the curling club, only 50 minutes. Anybody else got some good advice for Lucy?
I think we might have, we had when we started, it should be noted that I kind of mentioned we had kind of an issue starting. We had a year where we were not cleared to be curling, and that was when we had most of our recruiting was during that year. We focused a lot on just meetings and doing things as a club. I think a lot of curling, like college organizations, do kind of forget about that. And I think honestly, even we did once we started competing. We were so focused on how do I send eight people to 8 people to Massachusetts and 8 people to Yale this weekend. Like, how do I finance that and all that? Up front, we were worried about how do we have fun meetings? How do we get people into the room? How do we get 100 people into this room and make them have a good time? And that was some of our most explosive growth was during that time, because it became a big thing. We just go to the curling meeting and we never did any curling. We talked about curling a little bit, but we also played games and ate food, and we did social things outside and things like that. And I think that kind of gets forgotten. But if you think about it, any large college club you're in, it's kind of have aspects of that. And I think that can kind of get forgotten. And it's understandable why, because there's so many logistical problems that you have as a curling club. But kind of focusing on that seems to be the most important thing. And that's the reason why we grew so big so fast, was because we focused so much on that up front.
I can talk to that a little bit too. I'm Jake. I'm the president of the Notre Dame curling team. We've had a lot of similar struggles of just like getting ice time and things of that nature. But what's worked for us is establishing like a specific officer in the club whose role it is to like do a lot of what Robert was talking about, was just like setting up that social aspect of the club, because that's really what like people connect with once you give them a community, right? Just saying, oh, we're going to go out on the ice and throw some rocks doesn't really resonate with people to make them feel like they're a part of like something, So really building that community is critical. So we have like a person whose sole focus is building a community within the club. And that's what really brings people back. And then, by their junior year, they're there because they love to curl. But like that first year or two, they're really there because of the community that we're building. So I think that's the best way to build up that retention. You'll see like over the years, those people who started out just coming for the Kahoot trivia you were hosting about curling at the Olympics or something are going to be there because they, love the strategy of curling 3 years from now.
Kahoot's a great thing. Definitely use it.
You got started in an Olympic year, did you not, Bobby?
We got started on the tail end of Olympic year. So we had that benefit. That being said, Kahoot, again, that's one of those things. It's a great point. We use Kahoot a lot. You bring some prizes, you bring some shirts and things, and you make people enjoy that. And people get really excited about it. I still don't know quite why, but people get very excited about that. So that's what works. And things like that, like Kahoots, we did Kahoots. I'm only going on this because that was a great thing we did. It was half curling, half not curling. A lot of the people that joined at that time, they paid dues. They never touched a stone. And that's super important to any college club because, hey, that's money in the bank that can help, finance people that need to make that hour drive to actually curl.
All right. Thank you, guys.
You've had your hand virtually up.
Sure. Okay, I couldn't hear you there for a second, MJ.
Sorry.
Going back to one of the things that Bobby said earlier on regarding leadership, one of the biggest issues that we've had over the years with schools participating and then dropping out is the lack of a vigorous transfer of power, if you want to call it that, from one graduating leader to an undergraduate leader. And we've seen many, many schools disappear because a key individual who did all the work, did a great job at it, graduates, and then everything falls apart. So setting up a good structure for successional planning is key to a long-term success of a college curling program. And it was mentioned previously about PE curriculum. I am working on a PE curriculum right now, and that goes back to the question of why should a school, want to have curling as part of its club sports. We're looking at this in terms of not just having curling as a club sport, but having curling on the campus itself. And if we can set up a structure that is fully in line with all of the USCA methodologies for teaching curling, and at the same time provide a mechanism that through tuition, the school gets something out of having curling on one of their facilities, it's a win-win as far as our side of the equation is concerned. I will also say one other thing is that Jeff Plush, who is now the CEO of USCA, is a strong advocate of college curling. And one of the features of his of his interview process was that he wanted to see college curling as an integral part of the transition from junior curling to adult curling. So we do have a friend running the organization. Before everything broke down a year ago, we were even talking about how can we get Big Ten interested in college curling, just from the matter of bringing in a new sport into the view of others. And so whether that is resurrected here in the coming year or so remains to be seen. The idea was out there, and the idea was coming from the very top of the organization. So there is hope for a brighter day ahead as far as college curling goes from that aspect, along with just everybody getting back on the ice. And Nancy and MJ have both been working on, what we're looking at for a reboot for next year. So, and let's think about it as just that, a reboot. because this has been a long time without. We've lost 2 national championships. We want to make sure that when we start again in the fall, we do it the right way.
Thanks, Gordon. We've got just a few minutes left. Anybody else have a question, have some feedback for people who are trying to get their clubs up and off the ground running?
While anybody sends in questions or pipes in, just again echoing Gordon's comment about secession, that's 100% to be noted. I don't think our curling clubs, I've been on executive in different clubs, and different clubs, you don't know who's going to be the next executives because, the vote's a free-for-all of who gets, the most votes that day. A curling club is not a club that should be like that. You should know exactly who's going to be the next in office. Yeah, it's an election in these clubs, but at a college club, thankfully, people who took over for me, Mike is in here today, we knew he was going to be the next president from day one. And I know that they are pretty darn certain of who the next people in line are next year too. So we have a huge club, but at the same time, we kind of know who's next up, and giving them the resources way ahead of time is super, super important.
Absolutely. We always try to get our clubs that curl at the Utica Curling Club to decide their next leadership team before the end of the season, and we celebrate that transition at the annual chili party that Roger and I host for them. I think they come for the food more than anything else. All right, 1 minute to go. Any other last thoughts? All right, Bobby, I want to thank you so much for keeping your finger in the college curling pie and being willing to help us out. On the slide deck, which you will all get an email of, and along with a couple of question survey, there is my email addresses. Bobby's will be there too before the end. If you would like to keep your presence at this meeting quiet, fine. I will BCC everybody. Otherwise, I'll send it all out so that you can all see each other's email addresses. Other things, as I said, we'd like to have this be the first of several. If you got good ideas on what you would like us to tackle next in the realm of college curling, let me know. I'd be glad to hear from everybody. GNCC is on board with hosting these events for people all across the country. So thank you very much all for coming, and let's all get back on the ice this fall. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.